Don Mozilla here again for Small Business Digest. You know, some of us have thought about going overseas and having building a business overseas. Well, Biro has, and we're going to learn more about how he did it, what he's done. But first, Brian, welcome to the program.
Dave, it's great to be with you. I appreciate it.
Well, Brian, as we ask all our guests, tell us a little bit about yourself personally, then what you're doing now, and finally, a website people can learn more.
Sure. I always try to keep my priorities in the right perspective, Dave. And so anytime anybody gets an email from me, it says Brian Biro, husband, father, grandfather, speaker, author.
Oh,
So that's my top priority. I have been a professional speaker now for 34 years. Before that, I had two other really neat careers. My first career, I was a U.S. swimming coach. So I was working with young athletes to try to reach their potential in the pool. Then went into the corporate world, started my business career after I got my MBA from UCLA. Ended up being a vice president of two fairly large corporations. And then decided, I love building teams. I love helping people recognize that they're all leaders. And so I started my own professional speaking business and started writing books. And it's been a wonderful ride for 34 years. I've loved every moment of it. I've delivered almost 2,000 events around the world over that time, and just had a joy doing each and every one of them. My website shows it. It's just www.brianbiro.com.
will you spell it out for our audience?
You bet. It's BrianBiro. So www.brianbiro.com.
Okay. Having said that, I thought you were in Portugal, and I thought we were going to talk about that.
No, I'm not in Portugal. I'm actually in Charlottesville, Virginia, but I have spoken all over the world. And I love speaking internationally, incidentally, because people just have such a great enthusiasm in different parts of the world for growing and breaking through. But no, I'm not in Portugal, although I'd like to go. Let's do it.
Well, you know what it means is that my producer gave me the wrong sheet. Okay. So anyway, let's back up. Do you have a book?
I have a whole bunch of books. My most recent book is called Lessons from the Legends. And one of my great mentors, a person who made a huge difference in my life, was the greatest college basketball coach of all time, men's college basketball coach. Very pertinent since recently we've had the national championships. But my friend and mentor was John Wooden. And John Wooden, for those who may not know on your show, won 10 national championships at UCLA. No other men's coach in history has won more than 5 in a career. Coach Wooden won 10 in 12 years. Although he would have been the first to tell you, Dave, that he didn't win any in the first 27 years that he coached. He said, it's what you learn after you know everything that makes the difference. And so this book takes the foundational principles that John Wooden taught life about. You don't coach a sport, you actually coach people. And he called it the pyramid of success. It's actually, if you can see, it's behind me, and on my counter back there is a pyramid. And Coach Wooden really taught people to grow into their potential. So one of the legends and lessons from the legends is John Wooden, and talking about his pyramid of success, which also was highlighted a bunch on Ted Lasso for those who are Ted Lasso fans. The other legend was Pat Summitt. And Pat Summitt was in many ways to women's basketball what John Wooden was to men's basketball. And she too realized she coached people more than she coached basketball. And so I wanted to write about these two people who epitomized humility, character, focus, giving credit and taking responsibility, who really lived with a high level of integrity. Because I feel like it's a time where character matters. And this book is really to shine the light that not only is character a nice thing, it actually works. It works in business. You create better results than you ever would have. when you focus on building people, teams, and relationships, when you focus on controlling your own controllables.
Okay, now I know. Yes, uh, I can now talk intelligently uh, uh, about about us. But I'm going to ask you, I guess, a question. I happen to have interviewed Pat Summitt, did not ever interview John Wooden, but you're looking at two totally different personalities. And if you look at the way they coached, they were also different. But what is it that makes people like as diverse as that successful, in your opinion?
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because the reason I chose to write about these two as the legends is that their personalities were so different. You know, if you when you interviewed Pat Summitt, you know that Pat Summitt could melt the screen with her stare if she wanted to. She was
Yeah,
tough. You know, she liked to say, "Toughen up, Buttercup." And John Wooden was gentlemanly and very, you know, I think the harshest words he ever said was "good gracious." I think that was
yeah.
the about it. Um, so on their outside, they seemed very different. On the inside, they were so much the same. And I think the starting place for what made them so different from most, and so alike, and why they were so successful on the inside and their core principles, starts with humility. You know, a lot of people mix up the idea. They think that being humble somehow means you can't be confident. Not true. You can be extremely confident, as both of these people were, and very humble. Because being humble doesn't mean you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. But the real key to both of them, and why humility is so crucial to you building your small business, why it's so crucial to being any kind of a good leader, manager, coach, teacher, parent, only those who are humble, when you think about it, are lifelong learners. Because only those who are humble always believe they can get better and are always looking to learn, to pick up new ideas. And that was the foundational key to both of these two, most successful in many ways ever in their fields. And yet they were always looking to learn something new. So that's really one of the most powerful similarities they had in terms of their core principles. The other was they both shared a kind of similar definition of success. They both wanted to win, but to give you an idea how unusual they were, in 27 years at UCLA, John Wooden never said the words winning or losing to his players. Now, did he want to win? Oh, yeah, just as much as Pat Summitt. But what he wanted was for his players, his coaches, and himself to look at success as peace of mind. And that only can come from knowing you've given the best of which you're capable. In other words, his definition of success was about focusing on what you put in, and good things will come out. And Pat Summitt was the same way. As fire she was about winning, what she most wanted was for players to rise to their potential. And that's something that only they could control. Focusing on what you put in, great things come out. We are so conditioned to only give praise and to look for results, but we don't control results. We control what we put in to move towards those results. So those are two of the real keys that I think made them extraordinary. The third was that they understood that it's amazing what's accomplished when nobody cares who gets the credit. John Wooden and Pat Summitt were constantly looking for the little things that didn't show up to acknowledge and appreciate, to acknowledge a player who didn't score a lot of points. But what they did was they hustled and they worked and they made everybody around them a little bit better. So they were always looking to give praise for people's effort, energy, and attitude, even more than their results, because they knew deep inside that when they did that, those people would produce more results. So credit is something you give, responsibility is something you take. And both of them understood that in a very powerful way. So those are some of the magical ingredients that
What's the
we can all
fourth?
emulate.
What's the fourth one? What's the
Well, let's
fourth?
take a fourth one. A fourth one was that they truly lived their principles every day. They were walkers, not talkers. Um, John Wooden carried with him from the time he was 8 years old a little card that had a 7-point creed, which was all about making each day your masterpiece. And he focused on that every single day. Pat Summitt created her model of building people, which was called the definite dozen. And she focused on it every single day. It's amazing what's accomplished when we start to focus on something so consistently, so passionately. We'll get there. A lot of people will say the right stuff, but they don't live it each day. And to me, that was probably one of the most powerful keys to both of these, why they created so much respect. I'll give you a fifth one. They understood that loyalty starts by being loyal. You know, many people demand loyalty without giving loyalty up front. They looked at loyalty as starting on the inside, that they were loyal to the people around them, which means when their people moved on, suddenly they weren't the enemy. When their people moved on, they applauded them, they wished them the best, they hoped for the best for them, and they constantly delivered loyalty, and that's what created loyalty.
Okay, now I'm going to throw you a curve because a very, very well-known basketball coach said to me about both of those. They could not live in today's world because the basketball players that they coach are not the basketball players of today. What do you say to that? Because as small businesses, we're facing that every day.
I think whoever told you that was wrong. And the reason is what goes back to what we started talking about, which is humility. They constantly changed. Um, you know, it's very interesting to note that before John Wooden won 10 national championships in 12 years, he was known as the coach who couldn't win the big one. All right. He was known as a good coach, but he couldn't win the championship. Then he won 10 in 12 years. Suddenly he got smart. Well, guess what? Every year that he coached, he changed a little bit. He focused on what was working and what wasn't working, and he changed. Pat Summitt went to 8 national championships, Final Fours, before she won her first one, constantly adjusting. Now, there's a difference in would they have been successful in today's world? I think they would have, because they were constant learners. Would they have liked the way that it is today? Maybe not as much, because both of them were teachers. And I think the toughest thing for both of them, definitely more for Coach Wooden, because there's different rules in women's basketball. Women's basketball, you still can't go pro until you're 22 years old. So you still got to work with these young women for at least 3 years, often 4 years. But in men's basketball, you only have to be 19, so it's one and done. And Coach Wooden never called himself a coach. He said he was a teacher. And I think the hardest thing for him, as it was for Coach K from Duke, who had to adjust to this, was not having those young men for 4 years to really work on the development as human beings. I think they'd have a hard time with that. I think they'd also have a little bit of a hard time with all the money. That we've got NIL, name, image, and I forget what the other thing is. And I think that they really thought highly of the education. So would they have liked some of the elements? I'm not sure. Would they have been successful? I think they would have, because they never sat on what they used to do. They kept changing their approach when they saw it was important to change.
Well, it's an interesting one because, as I said, this particular coach, uh, uh, we were talking about the fact that John Wooden did things quietly, and this coach thought that coaches today could not do things quietly, and he couldn't. And he pointed out you cannot show a big time coach today that talks quietly like John Wooden did. If you think about it, and
It's an
then
interesting perspective. You know, Coach Wooden was extremely articulate, but he was a more calm kind of a guy,
yeah,
and he really believed that it's not a good thing to have big, huge peaks and valleys. He'd rather be more consistent.
yeah,
Pat Summitt was definitely fiery and had a big personality.
yes, yes, but but it took her a while. Uh, she treaded on people. She treaded on the fact that she was successful, and in her last years, she was, as you said, fiery. Some
Yes, she
people use
was.
a different word, but But let's stop here. How can people get your book, and what's the name of your book, and how can people get it?
The book is called Lessons from the Legends, and you can get it, of course, in anywhere you buy your books. You can, from Amazon to bookstores. You can also get it at my website, ryanbiro.com.
Okay. Now, having said that, and since this program is for small business, how would you apply those principles just in small business? In
Well, I
your
think the starting place that's really important for small business people is to focus on controlling your controllables. Most of whenever we're starting to focus on the things we actually control, we start to feel momentum. We build confidence. It's when we try to control the things we don't control that we often get frustrated and confused and angry and disillusioned. So there are three foundational controllables that I call breakthrough controllables that really, truly John Wooden and Pat Summit epitomized. And it's what I teach when I'm speaking. The first is about shaping your future, and that's about vision. And there's two foundational principles about vision. Number one, what you focus on is what you create. In other words, are you focusing more on what you don't want or creating what you do want? That's a major shift. You don't pretend there aren't challenges. You don't pretend there aren't big rocks in the road, but you don't stay locked on to what you don't want. The more you can shift your vision and your thinking to say, how can I create what I want and focus on it and visualize it every day, you're starting to control your vision in a better way. The second key to vision, to shaping your future, is stop using your memory to see. You know, in all my events, Dave, I ask people, what color is a yield sign? And every one of the audiences I've ever spoken to says yellow. Well, yield signs are red and white. Right? We changed the international signage standards 53 years ago. And yet every audience says yellow. Why? Because we're conditioned to think of road signs as being yellow and black. Well, where does that matter in building a business? All right, to stop using your memory to see is with people. Change the way you look at people, the people you look at change. Change the way you see yourself, the self you see will change. So the first controllable is to work on your vision. Remember, what you focus on is what you create, so focus more on what you want to create. And make sure you're not using your memory and conditioning to see. Look for what's right in front of you right now. Second key of controllable is to energize and engage yourself and your team. When it comes to human performance, a huge component of that is energy. Same with team building. And yet most people have been conditioned to think their energy is like the weather. It's like, hope my energy is good for the family picnic this weekend. Hope I have enough energy to make it through these 17 calls I have today. But when you understand that your energy is a choice and then start to cultivate a higher energy choice, watch out. Because to everyone you touch, your energy is your example. So if you want to build a successful business, before you can energize other people, who must you energize and engage? Obviously yourself. And there's two keys to building energy that allow you to make it a choice. Number one, movement. If you want to move your business, you want to move your life, you want to move your team, you got to move yourself. You've got to actually increase your level of movement. Whenever you've been at your best, you've moved differently than when you've not been your best. So if you want to move your life, you want to move your business, move yourself. The second and even more profound key to energy is purpose. Whenever you're full of purpose, you're full of energy. When you get to do what you love to do, energy is no problem. But when you lose sight of your energy, lose sight of your purpose, it's like somebody puts a pin in it. You know, David, every event that I speak, I bring with me a photo of my family because they're my purpose. And the last thing I do before I speak is I focus on my family. I focus on my purpose, and it fills me up. It changes me. It's because I realize that if I don't give the people in front of me the best I have to give, I'm not giving them my best. So focus on your energy and to energize and engage your team through movement, through purpose. And if you have people in your life who you consider energy vampires, in other words, I've spoken about energy for many years. It's every now and then somebody comes up and says, Brian, I have a lot of energy, except when I get around him. That person sucks the energy right out of me. No matter what I do, it's wrong. I always say the same thing to those people, David, say, stop it. It's not their energy. Never give up your energy to somebody else. It's not their energy. And as soon as you do that, you'll recognize that you can give your energy away to other people. They can take it that way. But until you recognize that you alone control your own energy, you can release those energy vampires. And with so doing, you'll feel a whole rise in your energy. So that's the second controllable. Energize and engage yourself and your team. And these were fundamentals of John Wood and Pat Summit. And the third is to build people, build teams, and build relationships. As a small business owner, you may think of your business as being some business in high tech or a business in service industry. You're in the people business. All right. It's how you grow and help others grow that will determine how far you go. So how can you build people around you, whether that's customer relationships, whether that's your team? And it comes down to understanding the secrets of recognition, acknowledgement, and appreciation. And most of all, by building trust, by being fully present with the people that matter to you. When you're fully present, it means 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with the people you're with. So those three fundamentals, those fundamental controllables, shape your future, energize and engage your team, build people, teams, and relationships. That's how you produce breakthrough results in your small business, in your health, in your relationships, in your life. And if you do it long enough, you work on those three fundamentals each day, then it will become who you are. And that's a model of personal excellence, integrity, accountability, and humility.
Well, very good. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. Can you instill energy into your people?
You know, it's fun that you asked that question because, I'm called a motivational speaker. And I always smile and I say thank you. I'm a motivated speaker. All right. Motivation must be internal. So can you give that? Can you instill that in other people? No, they still have their choice. Can you be an example? Yes. Can you be a spark? I think so. Can you be so consistent in the way that you do those three things that it becomes a model that begins to surround them and fill them up? Yes. So I think we impact people, but ultimately each of us has a choice. All right. So by doing that consistently and focusing on those, you build a culture. And a culture is a powerful ingredient in really instilling people with those same fundamental principles. John Wood and Pat Summit really built a culture within UCLA and Tennessee that when you came, you didn't have that culture for 4 years or for however long you were in college. That became a part of your life. So it's a tough question because I don't believe that we actually change people, but we allow people a chance to see where they want to get to and give them all the tools they need to make the choice to change.
I agree with you, but I've seen so many people that you sit there and say they're there, but they may be there physically, but they sure ain't there mentally.
Yep, yep. Every year the Gallup poll people do a study called the State of the American Workforce. And over the last 20 years or so, it breaks into three groups almost very consistently. The first group are the ones you love, Dave. They're called the fully engaged. Right? Fully engaged employees and workers across all industries, they have a mantra. Their mantra is, oh yeah, whatever you throw at them, oh yeah, we're going to have a tough season, but I think we can come out good. Oh yeah. The second group are what are called the somewhat engaged, which means they're somewhat not engaged. Right? And they have a mantra too. And their mantra is, think about this for your employees. Their mantra is, okay, things are going to be great around here. Okay. Things are going to be terrible around here. Okay. And the third group are what are called the actively disengaged. And hopefully you don't have that in your team, but if you do, they have a mantra too. And their mantra is, oh no, we're going to have a fantastic year. Oh no. 24% of American workforce, this is average over the last 20 years, are oh yeah. 49% are okay. 27% are oh no. If you want to have an unstoppable team, you got to turn that upside down. You got to get that 75% oh yeah, 25% okay, and 0% oh no. How do you do that? Well, you start by really focusing on living in that oh yeah frame yourself. I have a fundamental belief that people can break through. That some of those people that we kind of shake our head and say, man, I just don't know if they've got it. they have something more in them. There are no overachievers. That was one of John Wooden's favorite statements. There are no overachievers. We are all underachievers. We all have more in us than we think. And so, yes, there are people who are tough. And all I can say is um, live with as a leader with this principle: be easy to impress, but hard to offend. And then those people will not bring you down. All right. And if anything will bring them up, it will be that perspective of your own energy, your own vision, your own belief that they can change and that you can be a positive force to help them move forward.
Well, you should go talk to the post office. You know, I, you know, no matter where I go in this country and use a post office, you sit there and wonder, how did they hire these people, and how do they motivate them? I mean, it's just, oh, anyway, I just
You
had
know,
experience with the post office.
it's funny. I live in a small town outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and right before I got to be with you, I was at the post office, and my little local post office. These guys are great. They're awesome, and I think part of it is I treat them well too. So what you focus on is what you create. I smile at them. Most people, and I watch people in line, and a lot of people are coming in are not in the best moods coming in to start with. So, you don't control people, but you definitely control the way that you bring what you bring to people. So, we won't even give up on the post office.
Um, Ryan, we just have 2 minutes left. Your website again, and what would you like to leave our audience with?
The website is www.brian, Biro, brianbiro.com. And what I'd most like to leave people with is focus for the next week on doing something that'll change your life. And that is to be more fully present with the people around you. When you're fully present, it means 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with the people you're with where they are now. And whenever you're fully present with another human being, you tell them that they're important beyond words. It says to them, I matter. And whenever you're not present, you say to them, you're not that important. And if you want people to rise to potential, our job in building businesses, our job as parents is to help the people that we lead, that we serve, that we love to know they're important. Because when people know they're important, they move to, oh, yeah.
Well, on that note, we say thank you for, to me, a really interesting time. Thank you.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You have a phenomenal rest of this month and a phenomenal rest of life.